Welcome to the Non-Essential Podcast. I'm Steve Gibson.
I'm Ben Matlock.
And we're back.
We're back.
Back.
Back with a normal intro. Steve tried to do this with a sultry voice before, and it fucked everything up.
How's it going?
Because 1, 2, 3 doesn't sound the same as 1, 2, 3.
2, 3.
God damn it.
How's everybody out there in non-essential land today?
How's all the funky lads and ladies out there? Yeah, welcome to the show this week. If you haven't heard the show, we tell each other stories. I'm a lazy fuck, so I took this story from the Creepypastas again. We're just going to do that every time I'm tired. Sorry.
Creepypasta.
But this is a special one because this one, according to the comment section for it, it is a 67 out of 10.
That's awful specific.
Right. And it's by a user named Black Fedora Man, which could be anybody on the internet.
Well, maybe that's what earned the extra 57 points is just the name, but
yeah.
I kind of want that to be my nickname, Black Fedora Man.
Do you own a fedora?
He's got it, maybe. Do I? Not yet.
Are you black?
I do have a. Well, I mean, I could buy a black fedora. Is there any
part of your name that's true?
Well, the fedora could be black if I buy one. Yeah, I've got an Amazon Prime account. Actually, I don't know. I used to have a fedora. It wasn't black. It was brown. Yeah. I don't know, though. I don't think.
That's something that changed with me when I got back into skateboarding. Now I only wear trucker caps.
Nah. If you do what you do to fit in. I still wear my cowboy hat every now and then.
I'm into guns and truck nuts now. So
I'm a hat guy. I like different kinds of hats. I look ridiculous at all of them.
When I was a kid, I could not keep a hat on my head to save my life. And now, like, at work, they're getting more specific about dress code, which they go through in fits and bursts. I've wore a hat, like, every day for, like, 3 years. And then, like, now they're being like, hey, you can't wear a hat. So I haven't been wearing one the last couple days, and I feel fucking completely naked. Like,
yeah, I'm kind of the opposite. I used to wear hats a lot, but now I've got this like lush mane that I'm growing out, and it's gotta breathe. Also, hats don't like my just for my typical baseball hats are really all I wear, and I've got like 2 that I like, but now they like pop off my head because I have too much hair.
Because I'm too lush.
Yeah. Although I'm wearing a ski cap right now, or a beanie, whatever the fuck you want to call it.
Those were another one. I couldn't wear them until I did jobs that made me cold all the time.
Yeah. I look stupid in them, but I'm wearing one right now.
Yeah.
So
this is a story. It's called Midewest, and again, by a user Black Fedora Man, and it's apparently the best thing on the internet according to one person in a comment section.
It's his mom, Black Fedora Mom.
Black Fedora Mom. A family that creeps together, sticks together, I guess. Whatever. Yeah. Having spent my life in a buzzing metropolis, driving through the Midwest states was a hypnotic and sobering experience. Anyone who has seen the breadbasket of America will know what I'm talking about. Fields.
Are we called the breadbasket of America?
Yeah. We call you the shitty center, the shitty gooey center.
Yeah. And I'm throwing we in there because Ohio is considered Midwest, but that blows my mind because we're like a state and a half away from the East Coast. But
you're not. Let's be real. You're not East Coast.
No, you're
definitely if you're like more than one area than the other.
There's no Central America or Central United States.
Absolutely not.
It's just you just go from East Coast to Midwest.
There is a Central America. Turns out it's much.
Yeah, that's
much
why I had
south,
to reword that.
But we'll know what I'm talking about. Fields. Billions of acres of crops covering the land in waves of undulating leaves. The tame wilderness organized into rows, blocks, and circles, continuing on for hours and hours and days. This dude fucking loves fields.
Yeah. And this is like your classic, I'm kind of wondering, this is kind of how the Midwest is described by city people who have never been through the Midwest. I mean, we do have a lot of farm fields, more so out actual Midwest, but
any city people just drive through it, and like at first, this is what you first think, and then you're like, God, this goes on a while.
Yeah, there's really more trees than fields generally, and it's just woods and hills, and but there's a lot of fields, so well, whatever.
Well, what would you know? You're in Central America.
Si, senor.
Yeah. That's one of the strangest things about driving through the Midwest. The endless ocean of cornfields, birthed by man's labors, seem to go on without end, but with no signs of those who created it, except the fucking field.
And the barns and the farmers that are always in your way on the road. Yeah,
that's
there's a lot of signs.
That's the weirdest thing about cornfields. It's almost like they've always been.
It's like they grow themselves.
A car here, a small house there, a windmill, a rotting barn. It's as if some great civilization built it eons ago and then died out. Leaving the living remains.
Okay.
That
is a very apt description of the farm agriculture.
It's almost like the Aztecs left this for us. I agree. This is the best story. Leaving the living remains of their creations for you to drive past and wonder at. Not wonder about, you wonder at it as hard as you can.
And that's exactly why we till and plant the fields, is so you can drive past them and wonder.
Yeah. That's how I found myself. I'm just imagining this asshole like driving past these cornfields and being like, Doritos.
How quaint.
How do the Doritos come out of these? That's how I found myself on the evening of the last day in July, driving my red sedan along a veritable tunnel of a road cut across the cornfields. No broad highway for me. Rather, I had chosen a gravel detour which I had been promised led back to the interstate. I was sold a bill of goods. The last few exhausting days had seen me driving nonstop across the country, but today, as the sun peaked in the sky and began its free fall back into the earth, the end of my trip drew near. Rest, relaxation, and who the fuck knows, maybe even fun lay at my feet. The only thing separating me from my goal was a mile more of gravel road and a few insignificant minutes on the freeway. Unfortunately, my car was having a little trouble navigating the tiny country road. The assholes at the gas station had promised a worn but perfectly passable route, because they had fucking trucks, dude. Like, you had your sedan.
It's Tesla.
My go-kart. But a few miles in, it became increasingly evident that neither description fit this sorry excuse for a road. Still, the anxiety didn't really sink in until the gravel path degenerated into a dusty path and then into mere ruts on the ground. As the weeds growing between the tire tracks began to hit the underside of my car, I briefly grappled with the idea of turning around and taking the more traditional, albeit longer, paved route. But soon, that bitch, stubbornness, got her way, and I plowed on forwards against the rising weeds and deepening dark.
Yeah, a general rule of thumb, if you haven't been to the Midwest, if you encounter a road that turns into just grass, don't keep
You're
going.
not on the road, you just turned right off the road.
We don't actually drive on those kind of roads.
And there are tire tracks at first, because you're not the first to make that mistake. As the sun kissed its lower lip to the crust of the earth, which was a beautiful sentence, I stopped the car. My journey had come to an abrupt halt. The road, barely discernible among the vegetation and barely wide enough for the car, had ended. Stopped, right in the middle of a field of corn. Apparently this was the literal road to nowhere. I cursed the hicks back at the pump and save, who had given me these shit directions, and considered my options. Actually. The only action now was to return down the path I had so painfully traveled and then take the long paved road all the way around. Holding my breath, I tried to stifle a headache and several curse words running through my brain. That's when I heard that sweet sound. The unmistakable mating cry of a Harley tearing down a highway at full speed. And I think I did justice. You know?
Those Harley mating calls.
Those Harleys that go... Evidently, the interstate was straight ahead and only a few hundred yards away. I felt some guilt for what I was planning, but stubbornness' sister, adventure and lethargy, convinced me that mowing down several hundred feet of some farmer's corn harvest was worth not spending more hours on the road. I wasn't sure if a sedan could hold up to such punishment, but my car handled it like a pro, crushing and pulverizing the green stalks as they bent away and under the bumper. A couple minutes and bam, I was through, back out into the dim evening light. I laughed and flipped the wipers to clean all the cream shrapnel covering my windshield. I imagine this asshole going through this field and popping out, and his car is an entire, cob of corn.
Yeah, it's just sticking out the grill and stuff. I mean, we do that here, but...
I also like him maniacally laughing as corn covers his car. I'm sure. I just imagine one farmer staring at him, just his crop ruined, just like, this son of a bitch. I stopped mid-laugh. This was a road, but definitely not the highway. A 2-lane paved black road ran in a perfectly straight line off into the darkness, disappearing into the evening light. I cursed the assholes at the gas station again and prepared to bash my way back to the dirt path, but turning around, the beautiful hole I punched through the field was gone. A wall of corn, not row to row, but stalk to stalk, stood in front of me, and I realized with a sinking heart that there was no way I could find the dirt path again in that solid block of grain. Once again, I weighed my options. Just two now, left or right. I headed what I figured was due south and hoped this road linked up to the highway for which I so desperately strove. Miles and miles I traveled, no change in scenery, miles and miles of cornfields, pressing in on the car, enveloping me in the gloom of early night. No other cars, no other sounds, no radio reception. I stopped a few times at first, listening for the signs of a busy highway, and later just listening for anything at all. Anything beyond my own breathing. And then I heard the corn breathing. No. Nothing. Nothing but the crickets gently chirping to each other across the ocean of waving stalks. More driving. The crickets faded away and only the occasional shrill whine of a cicada cried out into the night. Is it cicada? What's that bug?
Cicada.
Cicada. Cicada?
Cicada, yeah.
Cicada, okay.
I said but yeah, cicada.
Cicadia.
They're gross.
Which is the name of my village, which is where he's
I think
headed.
it's a car from Kia. The Kia Cicadia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
More driving. Low on gas. More driving. The moon peered over the tufts of corn and lifted itself into the sky, transforming the land into monochrome, draining away color. More driving. Very fucking low on gas. More driving. Nothing but corn. Corn fucking everywhere. This idiot drove into a cornfield and now he's mad that that it's all there is. There's no highway in here. Yeah. More driving.
I was sure that yeah. That's what was interesting is that I
had a plan that absolutely should have worked. A barn? A barn. The glow from the light of the moon made it appear like a ship in the sea, a dark but welcome shape rising above the monotonous and oppressive landscape. With a mixture of relief and apprehension, I continue down the road. One turn, a short driveway, and I'm there parking at the bottom of the sloping hill that leads up to its moonlit roof. It's built in an old wooden style, high-gabled with heavy oak doors. It looks old, not just the normal, oh look, it's an old barn, kids, old, but really old, it hadn't been looked upon, much less opened, in hundreds of years. Still, its presence offered some hope and companionship, shelter, and safety. Getting out of the car, I walked up to the path to the front doors. Interestingly, the grass all around the barn, a meadow extending about 50 yards, was clearly meticulously cut and groomed. Also, the path up to the barn had been worn smooth, like some large machine had routinely pounded up and down, polishing it and flattening the path. Striding up to the door, I knocked, and knocked again. I gave it several minutes, but apparently no one was living inside. I open the doors and walk in. I was right. I always like these like setups of like, well, no one answers. I guess I'll just
go in.
I'll just trespass. The stench hit me first. It was powerful, like a left hook right on the nose. Seedy and cloying and sour, it was like being dunked headfirst into a porta potty. I retch, struggling to force fresh air down into my lungs. But as my eyes adjust and the stench escapes into the cool night breeze, the horror begins. The barn was full of corpses. Dead bodies lay on tables, hung from the walls, and sat piled in great heaps into the corners. Green with rot, their open mouths were grinning, their decayed eyes staring emptily up about the barn. The world started to spin around, my knees buckled, and my breath escaped once again. Hundreds of bodies. Some were still fresh, crumpled spread eagle in the corners of the barn, huge red-ringed gashes covering their bodies, wounds that looked like splashes of lipstick applied to their pale, naked forms. Older, rotten corpses were laying out flat onto the slabs of stone and wooden tables and hung from the walls, cut open and divided in a grotesquely methodical pattern.
See, I take exception to this, too. Us Midwesterners, yeah, we may have been literally raised in barns, but we don't just leave our corpses laying around everywhere,
God damn it,
we tidy up after ourselves.
We bury our work around here.
We don't necessarily bury it, but you at least line it up neatly on a shelf.
No, that's how you get the good corn. That's when you get the good bag of Doritos. It grew on top of some fucking bodies.
That bag of popcorn that screams as it pops.
You know how scary it would be if you were popping like popcorn in the microwave and every pop had a human echo. Their hearts were placed carefully near their heads, tongues cut out, various organs lying discarded and piled onto the floor below, and their intestines bunched up and knotted like a nightmarish bouquet of flowers. Further into the barn lay the bits and pieces, brown dried hunks of what used to be heads, arms, and torsos, and crates, giant wooden boxes piled neatly along the black wall of the barn.
See? Neatly.
Almost innocuous but horrible. Dark stains seeped from under the lid and ran down. But nothing compares to what hung from the ceiling. A fraying rope stretched down from the rafters. Hanging from the rope, gently swinging in the night over the bloody tables, was bound a horrible absurdity of something that was once alive. It resembled a victim of some terrible holocaust, its skin shriveled tight against its chest and belly, the arms unnaturally long and thin, hog-tied behind its back. Its hands and feet were enormous, ending in gnarled fingers a foot long, with a jagged yellow nail at the tip of each one. Its head, a burlap sack, had been tied around its neck, completely covering the corpse's features. A gash ran the length of its neck, the dried remains of some purple ichor running down from the wound and staining the bag over its head. Swinging there, dead in the moonlight. I rose above the waves of fear and stumbled out of the barn, slamming the door shut behind me. Outside, the moon still rose, the wind still blew, and the crickets chirped. The horrors inside the barn had no effect on the simple sanctity of nature. Leave, run, drive, those were the only thoughts that permeated my numbed mind. I turned away from the wooden monstrosity before me and I ran to my car, but the car wasn't there. There was nothing around but cornfields. As I ran around the barn, the rows of waving stalks danced before my eyes. Trapped in an ocean on a ship of the dead. No, I can't stay here. I made a break for the fields of corn, the terrors behind chasing me heedlessly into the unknown ahead. As I hit the edge of the corn stalks, my courage failed me. I couldn't go ahead, and I couldn't go back. I stood there, shrouded by the complete silence. A light breeze tousled my hair as I stood motionless and frozen. Gently, the field of corn swayed in place as the wind picked up. Then the wind really began to pick up. The corn stalks began to march back and forth in what was quickly becoming a maelstrom. The wind whipped my face and tore across my arms. It reached down my throat, pulling my scream out and mixing it with the surrounding chaos. Rain.
Yeah, that would probably... I don't know that I like that visualization, especially as somebody that's had, still getting over like a congestion, like reaching down your throat and tearing out your scream. Like,
I imagine him pulling out like a bunch of like, it's like that magic trick where a guy pulls about just a bunch of colored ribbons out of his pocket, but you do it through your throat.
Yeah, and there's screams, but there's still the colors. So the guy's just going red, blue, green, yellow.
Rain. It was suddenly raining, a torrent, a solid sheet of water falling from the heavens, knocking me off my feet. This guy's you have no chance, dude, if rain's knocking you on your ass. Turning the
Although I have been, there's been a couple times in my life where I've been in storms like that, where it's really more the wind, but that if you add a bunch of heavy rain to it, there's been a few times where you're not sure if you'll be able to actually stay upright.
Maybe you won't.
It's a weird feeling.
I never fall down. I've been knocked out and I stay up. It was suddenly raining, a torrent, a solid sheet of water falling from the heavens, knocking me off my feet, churning the solid ground into liquid. Lightning, thunder, arcs of electricity flew before my face, striking and touching the ground at my feet. I ran back to the only shelter there is, all my fear forgotten in the struggle to survive this onslaught from above. I'd probably roll against the lightning, honestly, than the barn of fucking bodies.
You get into a field of corn, that's going to kind of shield you a little bit from the rain.
And there's all that free corn.
Yeah, and if lightning hits close to you, you got cooked corn.
Yeah,
you got dinner.
Yeah, that's where the Doritos come from. Lightning hitting corn stalks.
Doritos jolt.
Yeah. I barricaded myself in the barn. I was shrouded in perfect darkness except for the pulses of lightning that glint off the outlines of the dead. That was past fear. I was petrified, crouching against the bolted oak doors, the rain hammering a machine gun fire behind me, trying to bash its way in. Behind me lay certain death, and in front of me lay the dead. The pulsing... He has not set up, the storm's so bad, I'll definitely die.
Yeah, I mean, given the situation, if it was just a regular, I was out in my backyard doing yard work and this storm came up, yeah, I'd run inside. But I'm not running to the murder house with a weird creature hanging from the ceiling.
Yeah. Behind me lay certain death, and in front of me lay the dead. The pulsing lightning seemed to animate them. They danced and shivered and grinned and laughed. They had nothing to fear. They laughed at me and my fear. They laughed at my blood. They laughed at my heartbeat. To this cacophony of laughter I sat frozen, watching over those that could not move. Lightning bolted across the sky. Flash. Dark. Flash. The wind blew the corpse tied to the ceiling. It rocked back and forth in long arcs above my head. Dark. Flash. Its hands swung back and forth beneath it. Dark. I thought the hands were tied behind the back. Flash. The rope is swung back and forth. The monstrosity was gone. Dark. Flash. Suddenly I saw it crouching on the floor. Its bagged head hung low beneath its shoulders. The cadaver's limbs flailed about, sliding it across the bloody wooden planks. Towards me, in the flashes of light, I saw its sickening, twitching movement as it swayed back and forth, its head bobbing around with no control. I heard it. Bubbling, murmuring, babbling. It sounded like a drowning man trying to talk. It howled and gurgled and sputtered and screamed. Unintelligible.
Again, why are you standing around that long to hear all that?
Have you not heard that rain outside? That's certain death. This is trying to communicate, at least. Unintelligible. No pattern, no sense. It twitched, screaming across the floor as I lay frozen against the wall, watching its movement in the throbbing light. Flash. Dark. I heard its blithering in my ear. Dark. I felt its ragged breathing. Dark. Burlap brushed by my face. Flash. I ran. Out the door and across the churning mud, the rain threw me down into the muck again and again. With a guttural snarl, it was after me on all fours. It leaped and twitched and gurgled and screamed as it chased me into the corn. Knocking aside the stalks, I staggered into the pitch blackness. I ran and ran. Unseen things tore at me. Was it the leaves or had the beast caught up? I ran and ran. I ran and tripped. I tripped on the root, or did it grab me by the ankles? I ran and ran and ran, oblivious to the darkness, to my fear, to my aching lungs, and then it caught me. Long nails, no talons, gangrenous and yellow, tore into my shoulder and held me back. I stumbled and fell. I was going to die. I could feel its breath on my face again. I could taste the death on its hidden lips. I will not die. With a yell, I rose up and grabbed its sallow arm, tearing its claws out of my back with a sharp flash of pain and blood. The monstrosity gibbered and yelped, and I ran, and I ran, and I ran, and I tripped again.
Come on, get those knees up, buddy.
And I
knees
ran,
up.
then I fucked up. But then I ran some more.
Some more, yeah.
Falling down into darkness, skidding across mud and stones, almost drowning in the muck. I tumbled down and down. Then it all came to a stop. I looked up from the bottom of a ditch and realized I'm out of the cornfield. I was at the road. The rain had gone away. The wind had died. Best of all, my car was parked by the edge of the road. I wasted no time.
I forgot I left it here.
Oh, yeah. It wasn't in the cornfield all along.
It's good to know that the corpse monster has valet service.
Yeah.
Do I tip or?
Yeah. I wasted no time in jumping in, locking the door, and starting the engine. Miraculously, I had half a tank of gas. With a yell, I stepped on the gas pedal, hoping to charge forward forever and ever out of the blackness and into the light of day. The mud churned beneath me.
Wait, did you say with a yell? Because I love the mental image of a guy suddenly out of danger in his own car, just driving down the road.
Corn mud. My tire spun helplessly, then sunk into the muck. Ahead of me, the corn stalks parted, and the dead thing crawled out into the beam of my headlights. With growls and burbles, it slowly slipped through the mire in front of me, taking its time, savoring the web of dread it had trapped me in. Last chance. I stepped on the gas again and flew forward. The creature leaped. My windshield cracked with a thunk and a splash of purple blood. It collided against the car, then flew across the road. "Fuck you!" I cried as I steered towards its crumpled form. 10 feet.
A little boy playing in the front yard looked at me like, "What did I do?"
What the hell?
Just some random stranger from out of town driving by. "Fuck you!"
Just flip kids playing in a yard. The bird. Yell, "Fuck you!" 10 feet, 5 feet, 3 feet. It got up. I missed. But as I went swerving by, it didn't give chase. I could see it in the rearview mirror, struggling to stand up. I shifted into reverse and revved the engine. Then a shape appeared above the cornstalks, blotting out the moon. A shadow climbed out of the field and walked down to the road. The light of night shone off shoulders that stretched meters across. 40 feet above the ground, the outline of a head eclipsed the stars. It bent down to the monstrosity sitting in a pool of vile blood. The shadow picked it up, caressed it. Then it turned toward me. A low moan filled the air, rattling the car and sending the cornstalks into another mad dance. With its free hand, the monstrous shadow reached down to its waist and lifted something high into the air, something big and sharp that reflected the light of the moon across the darkened fields. I slammed back into gear and flew forward. The moan continued, the steering wheel coming loose in my hands. The cornfields are in a mad frenzy, stalks bending and swaying with so much force they uproot and toss into the air, covering the road in shadows and leaves. Thud, 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 thud. Ground shaking footsteps coming for me, coming closer. A shriek
faster, must go faster.
Must go faster. Damn, I
Jeff
tripped.
Goldblum.
I fucked up again.
Just Jeff Goldblum was staring in my back seat.
A shriek of metal and something cleaved the roof of my car in two. Light, that's very cartoony. Just imagine it's just a perfect slice of this car down the middle.
Well, and then to cleave just the roof in two means it was like a horizontal swipe at it, which makes no sense from... If you're chasing something, wouldn't you come down at it with your blade? Like, wouldn't you, if anything, wouldn't you cut the car in two lengthwise?
Yeah. Shriek of metal and something cleaved the roof of my car into two. Light spilled into the car like air into a wound. The sound of twisting metal deafened me as the wheels began to lift off the ground. And then it was over. I dropped back to the road and accelerated, the shadow's footsteps fading away into the hellish moan. I tore down the road without abandon, the dark shape and its unearthly call fading behind me. I get it now. The horrible blubbering shape was merely a pet, a dog, a guardian of whatever nightmarish creature lives and works in the barn. It was the true master of that slaughterhouse. And although it was far behind that dark shadow, it looked enormous. It turned, a flash of silver bursting from its hand as it disappeared back into the swaying cornfields. Pedal to the metal, 130 miles per hour, the engine roaring, the tires squealing. I flew down the road, impervious to my surroundings, to the blood flowing down my back. Minutes passed like lifetimes. Trees and shadows loomed like 1,000 unnamed horrors down upon my head. Then, a light. More lights. A town. Not just a town, the town. The fucking place I was trying to reach so long ago. Earlier today in an earlier life. I stumbled into a diner, the screaming of the waitress lulling me into dark unconsciousness.
Yeah, all those screams that lull you into unconsciousness.
Ah, the lullaby of a woman being afraid. Sleepwalking, the doctors say. Here, take these pills, they say. 100 doctors, maybe more, and they all agree that I'm a head case. The cuts on my face and arms? Scratches from the sharp corn leaves. Are corn leaves sharp?
Not enough to do that. I mean, they might scratch up your face a little bit, but you could tell the difference between a monster slice and a corn leaf slice.
My shattered windshield, I drove into a ditch. They throw a rainbow of pills in my face to cut down on my dreams, to avoid panic attacks, to bury my sorrows in a field of manufactured happiness. I guess doctors know best. Still, there are some things they've never been able to explain. I had some tests done on the purple liquid spattering my car. Inconclusive, all of them. Apparently, it's blood.
Where does one go about having some tests done?
And Jimmy Ray's blood inspection.
Yeah, if I had an alien come down and shart on my car, I wouldn't have the foggiest idea of where to send that to have it tested. You just show up. I'm I'm going to the science store. Can you test this liquid?
My uncle is what you would call an alien expert. He will tell me if this is spectral monster blood. Apparently it's blood, but contains things that are not blood. There isn't much to say about the straight, clean cut that runs the length of my roof either. Nobody has ever been able to tell me what can cleave steel like butter. Well, I'm sure there's plenty of things, but...
Yeah.
Then there are the 4 jagged wounds across my back that ooze pus and bleed, but refuse to heal. Well, that's just an infection.
Right.
I stay in the city now. The chalky smell of concrete, the sharp smell of steel, even the bitter aroma of living humans keeps me sane. My apartment has no plants in it. I eat meat and bread. There we go. Good man. Just...
Yeah, oh, well, corn forsook me, so all vegetables can go to hell.
The sight of a cob of corn, or even a kernel, makes me throw up, sometimes faint. For the most part, I can interact normally, except for the vomiting thing, and pretend like the last day in July never happened. I feel perfectly safe in the daytime. But each night when I sleep, I'm forced back to the moonlit fields where the corn stalks bend and sway with the howling wind. Back to the halls of corpses, where the hooded monstrosity shrieks and gibbers and twitches. Back to the haunting ground of the unseen butcher whose long knives flash into the darkness. The end.
Dun, dun, dun.
That is a good one.
Yeah, overall. I did like it.
Very,
like I said,
very
cliche Midwest.
To me.
Yeah. Yeah. It made me think, though, I half wanted him to just get lost in his cornfield for half a day, find a barn of corpses, and then find his way out of the field and just never mention it again. Be like, yeah.
And then I got out.
That's the end.
Just I was lost and then I made it. Yeah.
But
I agree. That is exactly a 67 out of 10. Almost at 69,
I'm not
a little bit short.
As an Ohioan, I'm not afraid of corn now, but I am definitely afraid of thunderstorms.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would gladly throw myself into a crime scene to get out of the rain. So yeah, that was fun. That's the thing about creepypastas. They're such cop-out episodes. I always feel bad for them, but then by the end, I'm like, that's a good episode.
Yeah. No, I liked it a lot. And like you said, very, like, it made some decisions, but there was a lot of points where I was picturing this stuff, and it was really cool, like, visualizations.
It's actually one of the few where I think visually, like your mind's eye comes up with a good visual for the monsters, you know?
Yeah. Without them, like, I mean, he went into pretty good detail about the one hanging from the ceiling, but still not overly detailed, which we've talked about that. That's a terrible mistake to make in horror, to get overly detailed. And then the like final creature was just that it was like this big lumbering figure, like you can kind of picture like
of another
but it's
dimension.
like what kind of creature this size would like have this other thing as a, like, by describing the first thing, it lets your mind to kind of, so I like that a lot.
Like, it's probably one of the best examples so far since we've been doing these episodes of like almost cosmic horror done really well, because they set up the first monster and it's very like, the vibe I got was total like Jeepers Creepers kind of, you know, this. Yeah.
And you could see that being one of the monsters or one of the dangers from a mile away.
Yeah.
But that kind of was that classic, that really good.
Yeah, it was a great like misdirection of distraction. Like, actually, the thing you should be worried about is whatever has this thing on a leash. You know?
Right.
Like, that's really smart. And I think that's what I think kind of took that story over the top for me. And also corn.
Yeah. Yeah. Jinx.
You and me are basically the same fucking person at this point.
Yeah, after.
So yeah, that's the story of this week.
I was a little curious. Yeah, one more critique that's a stupid critique, but I have to point it out because I kept thinking about it towards the end there. He got back to his car and he's like, and I'm driving away. But right before he got to the barn, he was talking about how he's basically out of gas. Mm-hmm. So that's what I was waiting to happen. He'd be like, I got away from the crate. Fuck.
Like, no, he had a half tank of gas. That's why he was like, oh man, awesome. I have a half tank of gas. And then, so like, it is like kind of, I mean, it does feel like it was a little like, it felt like he had kind of the bullet points of the story, and then he was kind of, you know.
He had to kind of backtrack. I missed that part where it's like, oh, I got to have to take it. But that means what you do is you just leave out the detail about being like.
I feel like you could have cut out that whole chunk of trying to run away in the storm, and you could have done better, because it like, again, just doesn't make any sense to like double back just because it's a very bad storm, like.
Yeah, like I'd maybe hunker down somewhere, but the last place you go is back into a barn of corpses.
And I feel like, considering all that exists to do is get him back into the barn so the creature can come to life, I feel like you could have just done that and just had like, just, you know, for some reason I couldn't get the fucking barn door open again, you know, just, even though that's kind of a cliche, like, it would have gotten from A to B a little bit quicker. Because there's just this whole, like, I tried to run away, but then I got wet. And I didn't like that.
Yeah. I had jeans on, and you know how wet jeans are. They're just very
It's just the worst. Just bunching up, and fuck that. But overall, yeah.
I don't know. It was also one of those stories that, like, as I was listening to it, I was kind of tempted. I've been tempted a couple times to be like, I would like to take this story and then try my hand at like rewriting it. But I fear it would just, to me, it would be a fun exercise, but I fear it would come off as like conceited. Like I can, yeah. And that's not like where.
That's not where these come out of.
Because because, well, yeah, and it wouldn't be like, oh, look, I wrote it better. Well, that's not the point, because anybody can re-edit something, and hopefully you're making it better. the whole point of the creepypastas, we've talked about that before. But it is very tempting because I liked everything, but there were some places where I felt like you could throw some real more interesting.
Yeah. I think, and that's kind of the mark of like, you know, a pretty solid story. Is when you do look at it and you're thinking like, oh man, there's yeah, like it sparks your imagination, and you're like, here's what I would do with it, with that kind of setup.
So fuck it, we're gonna hang up, and I'm gonna take out a new website and call it Creepy Leftovers or something like that, or Reheated Pasta.
Takingyourshit.com.
The best part, jeez, now I can't breathe. Best part would be rewriting these, but not putting them under the Creative Commons license. Like, like, fuck no, these are my stories. Nobody can share.
Copyright me. Copyright Penguin House Publishing. So yeah, that's our story this week.
I mean, that's basically what Disney does, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they take.
And I'm gonna fight Disney on that. I'm gonna be like, I actually own Star Wars. It was because I spelt it with a Z.
See. Well, I like the story. Good job on picking it out. I guess now in order to top it, though, you have to find like at least a 72 out of 10.
Yeah. Oh, it's ever upwards around here with quality. But yeah, that's the show this week. Thank you all for listening, and there will be another show next week. Probably. Yeah.
Probably, yeah. I don't know. One of us might lose it and just wander off into the Alaskan wilderness, but...
Just get a DM that's like, I finally got reception. Steve, why is there so much fucking corn here?
That's what'll happen, is we'll both go into the wild, but at the same time, and run into each other out there and be like, what are you doing here?
God damn, you weren't kidding. There's a lot of corn in Central America.
Anyway, next week, be there or don't be there.